Have you ever heard the words magic, witchcraft, and mysticism used interchangeably? It happens all the time, right? Someone lights a candle with intention and calls it magic. Someone else pulls a tarot card and says they're practicing witchcraft. Another person meditates deeply and describes it as a mystical experience. While there's a lot of beautiful overlap, these three paths are actually quite distinct, each with its own history, philosophy, and goals. Confusing them isn't just a matter of semantics. It can actually shape how we approach our own spiritual journey and understand the experiences of others. So today, let's untangle these terms. We're going to dive deep into what makes each one unique, exploring the core ideas behind magic, the practical nature of witchcraft, and the inward journey of mysticism. By the end of this, you'll have a much clearer map of these fascinating spiritual landscapes. Let's start with magic, or as many practitioners prefer to call it, magic with a K. This spelling was popularized by Aleister Crowley to distinguish it from stage magic, the kind with rabbits and hats. At its heart, magic is the science and art of causing change to occur in conformity with will. Think of it as a system for interacting with the subtle, unseen forces of the universe to manifest a desired outcome. A magician is like a spiritual engineer. They study universal laws, things like correspondence, vibration, and polarity, and then apply them through focused intention, will, and ritual. The goal is often about creating change in the external world, whether that's for personal development, attracting opportunities, or protection. The tools of magic can be very elaborate, complex symbols, specific incantations, meticulously planned rituals, and tools like wands, cups, and daggers that represent different elemental forces. The focus is on aligning one's personal will with the divine or universal will to make things happen. It's a very active, disciplined, and often ceremonial path. Now, let's talk about witchcraft. While a witch certainly uses magic, witchcraft is more than just spellcasting. It's a practice, a craft, and for many, nature-centered spirituality or religion. If magic is the what, the act of causing change, witchcraft is often the how and why, rooted in a specific worldview. Historically, the term witch has a complicated and often dark past, but modern witchcraft has reclaimed it as a title of empowerment. At its core, witchcraft is often deeply connected to the earth, the cycles of the moon, and the changing of the seasons. A witch might work with herbs from their garden, honor ancient deities, or celebrate festivals like the solstices. The practice is often very hands-on and intuitive. It's a craft, after all. You learn by doing. While a ceremonial magician might focus on complex rituals to ascend to higher planes, a witch might be more focused on practical, hearth and home magic. A spell for a good harvest, a charm for a sick friend, or a ritual to find a new job. It's often more personal and less dogmatic than formal magical systems. For many, being a witch is a complete identity, a way of living in tune with nature and its energies. So we have the active will of the magician and the nature-based craft of the witch. Where does mysticism fit in? Mysticism is the journey inward. Unlike magic, which often seeks to change the external world, mysticism seeks to change the internal world of the practitioner. The ultimate goal of the mystic isn't to manifest a new car or cast a protection spell. It's to achieve a direct personal and intimate union with the divine, the absolute, or the ultimate reality, whatever you choose to call it. It's about transcending the individual ego and experiencing a state of oneness with all that is. Think of figures like Rumi, St. Teresa of Avila, or the Zen masters. Their path wasn't about commanding external forces, but about surrendering the self. The tools of the mystic are things like meditation, contemplation, prayer, and self-inquiry. The journey is one of letting go, of quiet observation, and of dissolving the boundaries between the self and the universe. A magical experience might be successfully performing a ritual that brings a result. A mystical experience is a moment where you lose your sense of self and feel utterly connected to everything. So, can a person be all three? Absolutely. This is where the beautiful overlap comes in. A witch might use ceremonial magic techniques in her practice. A magician might have a profound mystical experience during a ritual that changes his entire perspective. And a mystic might use a simple folk magic charm as a focus for their devotion. The paths aren't mutually exclusive. For example, a witch might cast a circle for protection, which is a magical act. During that ritual, she might feel a deep, ecstatic connection to her goddess, which is a mystical experience. All three elements are present. The distinction lies in the primary focus and ultimate goal. Is your main goal to create external change through will and ritual? That's primarily magic. Is your main goal to live in harmony with nature and practice an earth-based craft? That's primarily witchcraft. Is your main goal to dissolve your ego and unite with the divine through inner work? That's primarily mysticism. Why does knowing the difference even matter? Well, for one, it helps us find the path that truly resonates with us. If you're drawn to structure, symbolism, and the power of will, the path of ceremonial magic might be for you. If you feel a deep connection to the earth, the seasons, and hands-on, intuitive work, witchcraft could be your calling. If your deepest longing is for inner peace and a direct experience of the divine, then the mystic's path might be where you belong. Understanding the distinctions also fosters respect within the broader spiritual community. It allows us to appreciate the unique beauty and validity of each approach without trying to force them all into one box. It's like appreciating the difference between being a chef, a baker, and a farmer. They all work with food, but their skills, tools, and end goals are different, and each is valuable in its own right. When we use these terms with clarity, we honor the traditions and the practitioners behind them. To sum it up in a simple analogy, imagine you want to cross a river. The magician would build a detailed, powerful bridge, using precise engineering and a force of will to span the gap. They are focused on the construction and the outcome. The witch might find a fallen log, honor the spirit of the tree, and use their knowledge of the river's currents to cross safely and in harmony with the environment. They are focused on the practical, intuitive journey. The mystic, on the other hand, wouldn't cross the river at all. They would sit by the water's edge and meditate until they realize that they are not separate from the river, that they are the river, and there is no gap to cross. The goal is not the other side, but the realization of oneness. Each approach is valid, powerful, and transformative in its own way. The question is, which journey calls to you? Are you here to build, to walk with, or to become? Thank you so much for joining me on this exploration today. Hopefully, this has brought some clarity to these three incredible interwoven paths. If this resonated with you, I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. Which path do you feel most connected to? Don't forget to like this video if you found it helpful, and subscribe for more deep dives into the world of spirituality and personal growth. Until next time, walk your path with intention and wonder. What if the reason most people never go deep into any of these traditions is that the surface was designed to be enough? There is a threshold in every serious tradition of knowledge, a point at which the introductory material gives way to something that requires genuine commitment, genuine change, and genuine willingness to lose certain comfortable assumptions about who you are and what is real. Almost every tradition acknowledges this threshold, and almost every tradition acknowledges that most people do not cross it. This is not elitism. It is observation. The outer court of any temple has always been accessible. The inner chamber has always required something more. What contemporary culture has done is fill the outer court with increasingly sophisticated entertainment while quietly removing any indication that an inner chamber exists at all. The magical traditions recognize this problem early. The concept of exoteric and esoteric knowledge, the outer teaching available to anyone, and the inner teaching available only to those prepared to receive it, is one of the most consistent features of every major mystical and magical current in history. It appears in Pythagorean schools, in Neoplatonism, in Sufi orders, in Kabbalistic lineages, in Hermetic fraternities. The outer teaching is not false, but it is incomplete in a very specific way. It gives you the vocabulary without the grammar, and this opens a door few dare to walk through. Because the grammar of these systems is experiential, it cannot be transmitted through text alone. It requires practice, repetition, and, in the deepest traditions, a guide who has already crossed the threshold you are approaching. The collapse of living transmission lineages in Western culture over the past 3 centuries is not simply a historical footnote. It is the reason why most contemporary practitioners of magic, witchcraft, and mysticism remain permanently in the outer court, consuming more and more content about the inner chamber rather than actually entering it. What changes when you actually cross that threshold is something practitioners across all 3 traditions describe with remarkable consistency. It is not that you gain power or knowledge in the conventional sense. It is that your relationship with the unknown changes its fundamental character. It stops being terrifying or fascinating. It starts being intimate, familiar in the deepest possible sense of the word, as if you were recognizing something you have always known, but systematically forgotten. The architecture of that forgetting is what these 3 traditions, each in its own way, were built to dismantle. How recognizing the difference between these 3 paths might be the most practically significant thing you do this year. The conversation about magic, witchcraft, and mysticism tends to stay in the domain of the theoretical. Which tradition is older? Which is more authentic? Which has better historical documentation? These are interesting questions, but they are not the most important questions available to someone who is actually searching for something real in this territory. The most important question is a much simpler one. What are you actually trying to do? If you are trying to change something, in your circumstances, in your relationship to your own psychology, in the material conditions of your life, then the magical framework is the most structurally appropriate starting point. It is built around the premise that change is possible, and that symbolic action is a legitimate technology for producing it. The history of magical practice is full of systems that address precisely this kind of intentional engagement with reality. If you are trying to belong to something, to locate yourself within a story larger than your individual biography, to feel the weight of ancestral continuity beneath your feet, then the witchcraft tradition is offering you something that the magical tradition alone cannot. Not technique, but rootedness. Not power, but place. But what comes next changes everything. Because if what you are actually searching for is neither change nor belonging, if what you are reaching for is the direct experience of whatever is most real, stripped of all the filters that ordinary perception imposes, then neither magic nor witchcraft is your primary path. The mystical traditions are the ones built specifically for that kind of searching, and they will ask more of you than either of the other 2. Not more effort, more surrender. These interpretations appear across centuries and cultures, often studied as symbolic patterns rather than literal claims about supernatural reality. The reason this distinction matters in 2025 specifically is that we are living through a moment of massive symbolic disruption. The narratives that organize collective meaning for centuries are losing their authority at an accelerating rate. People are searching, in unprecedented numbers, for frameworks that give experience its weight back. And into that search, an enormous amount of content is flowing that looks like depth, but functions as distraction. Knowing the difference between a technique, a tradition, and a direct experience does not guarantee you find what you are looking for, but it makes it considerably harder to mistake the map for the territory. And that distinction, in the end, might be the one that matters most. If this video opens something you want to keep exploring, subscribe to this channel and turn on the bell. These questions go much further than one video can hold. Tell us in the comments, which of these 3 paths, magic, witchcraft, or mysticism, feels closest to what you have actually been living.